Hi friends, today I'm teaming up with my talented friend Favi from Arrows DIY. After you watch my video, you can head over to hers, which is linked in the description box below and pinned in the comment section. We have several upcycled glass DIYs to share with you. The first step to this project is cleaning your glassware. A few of you suggested that I use denture cleaner tablets to remove stubborn grime inside of bottles. I didn't have any, so I'm using the next best thing, Alka-Seltzer tablets. We had a few left over from a science project. I filled the bottle with water slightly up over the top of the stain, dropped in half of a tablet at a time until I saw the grime come off the bottle and float to the surface. Stubborn spots may need 2 or 3 full tablets along with a longer soak time. I then wiped the outside of the bottle with a lint-free cloth and rubbing alcohol and let them dry. And we can move on to step 2. I recommend for a durable finish applying primer if you're going to be painting any glassware. Some options are Slick Stick from Dixie Belle, their new Bonding Boss, Gesso, which I've used several times in the past, or any paint that has a primer base coat in it. Step 3. Apply 2 coats of paint, allowing each coat to dry before applying the next. Today I'll be batch painting to speed up production, so all 5 pieces will be painted with primer and then receive 2 coats of apple barrel white paint. I find the white paint with black accents sell the best for me, but you can paint them any color that you choose. Project number 1, materials. A small primed and painted glass jar, IOD ink pad and the courier stamp, air dry clay, E6000 glue, and a silicone fondant mold found from Amazon that I do have linked below. Step 1. Apply designs to the jar using an ink stamp. Lay the ink stamp face down, apply the ink, gently roll the jar over the pad. Try to apply even pressure to ensure that the ink is able to go on the whole side of the jar. Be careful not to touch the wet ink as you roll the jar. Don't worry if you have bare spots. Give the ink a few minutes to dry and use smaller stamps to fill in the bare spots. An option would be to add a pop of color in those spots, maybe a transfer, part of a napkin, or printed rice paper. Step 2. Add decorative trim to the rim of the jar. Take a small amount of air dry clay and work it with your hands. Press it down into the mold. I pop mine in the freezer for about 10 minutes and it pops right out of the mold easily. Apply E6000 glue around the rim and gently press the trim piece down. You'll want to make sure the trim piece is pressed evenly along the rim and then repeat this step if additional piece is needed. I turned mine upside down onto a piece of parchment paper while the glue dried. Step 3. Paint the trim. You could even add a pop of color by applying some colored wax. The final step will be to seal the outside of the jar with your favorite sealer. Project number 2, materials. Small primed and painted spaghetti jar, printed napkin, Mod Podge, burlap ribbon, and a small bird ink stamp. Step 1. Tear the edges of the napkin for an aged look and remove the second layer of the napkin. And you can use that part to keep for future projects. I did purchase these napkins at our local Christmas tree shop a few years back, and sadly they have since closed permanently. Apply a thin layer of Mod Podge to the jar in sections, pressing the napkin down and smoothing it as you go. I like to take a brush and go around the outside edges to make sure it's glued down properly. I do not apply Mod Podge up over the top, but I will apply a sealer over the entire piece as the final step. Months ago at the Dollar Tree shop, I found this thin burlap ribbon that I think will look nice to cover up the rim. I decided that it needed a small bird ink stamp on the top corner. I will stamp that on prior to gluing on the ribbon. Usually I use hot glue to apply the ribbon onto glass jars, but the E6000 was sitting right here, so I decided to go with that today and it worked out just fine. Just a little bit longer of a drying time. Project number 3 materials: large primed and painted classical jar and the lid, ceramic knob, white wax, Mod Podge, and a vintage style label printed on rice paper. You can download this free printable from my blog, which is linked up above and in the description box below. Step 1. Print and attach the label. I printed this design on rice paper, tore along the edges, and applied it to the front of the jar using a very thin layer of Mod Podge. And again, I did not go over this label with Mod Podge because I will go over with the sealer at the end, but you can definitely do what you're most comfortable with. I like to go around the edges with a cloth, cleaning up any excess glue and also making sure that the label is tacked down. Step 2, making the jar topper. Apply primer and paint to the jar lid, and then once that's dry, drill a hole in the center to put the ceramic knob through. I decided that the lid needed a little bit of white wax to give it a textured look and help it blend in. And then the final step is to apply your favorite sealer, and this piece is a wrap. Project number 4 materials: a primed and painted oil bottle, white and dark wax, transfer from Dixie Belle, and ribbon and a vintage button. I painted this piece using thick brush strokes to cover up the previous design that I could not remove off of this bottle. I have this old rub-on transfer that came off of its backing sheet in my stash, and somehow it's all banged up. I'm not sure if it's going to stick, but I'll give it a try. There were definitely some stubborn areas of the transfer that didn't come off onto the bottle, so I decided to just go with the torn vintage look. Next, I applied dark wax to some of the edges first and wiped it back, and then onto the sides. I would definitely recommend applying clear wax prior to colored wax because it gives you more control and a cleaner finish look. I am out of both of my liquid and paste wax at the moment, so I just decided to make the best of it. The end product has a more muddy look than I would have liked. Next, doing the same with the white wax to lighten up some of the areas that were dark and add another layer of subtle texture. Looking back, I should have applied the white wax first to control the dark wax better. Because I added wax to this entire piece, I will not apply an additional sealer. The final step in this project is to add embellishments. It's definitely not my strong suit, so I'm always up for some recommendations on what I can add. I tied a little piece of ribbon that I purchased at the Dollar Tree a few months back and added a little vintage button that I had in my stash. Project number 5, my favorite piece of the week, but I need your suggestions on what I can add to the top of the neck of this bottle. Materials: a syrup jug, baking soda, painter's tape, and a transfer from Vintage Labels 2 by Redesign. I added a bit of baking soda to that second coat of white paint, applying with wide random brush strokes to create texture. Once that layer was dry, I decided to paint the bottom the same color as the transfer. I mixed gray and cream color paint together and a touch of dark brown, and it came out pretty close. This mixture was half paint and half baking soda, so a bit thicker. And when I applied it, I tried to create as much texture as I could. Next, I'm adding the rub-on transfer before the final step of adding the sealer. Be sure to let me know in the comments below what else could I add to this bottle to complete the look. For more upcycled glassware inspiration, head over to see Favi at Arrows DIY and say hello and let her know that Kim sent you. Friends, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed today's video and collaboration. Have a super blessed week, and I will see you soon.